The treble winners, Manchester City, have agreed a fee with RB Leipzig for their defender Josko Gvardiol. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Michael Bridge and Dharmesh paying no attention to me, but they are here and they're going to dissect the day's transfer news. And as City close in on one of European football's most highly regarded defenders, we also have the very latest from the chasing pack. We've got updates from Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea and Tottenham, all coming up. And we take an in-depth look at what's been a pretty difficult summer so far for West Ham, who are still the only Premier League club not to have made a signing. Right, let's start with Manchester City though. Josko Gvardiol. Michael, tell us how close we are.
We are close, very close to completion. Of course, this is a player Manchester City have looked at for some time, and with good reason. An excellent defender. You don't get many premium defenders who can play at the left of the centre. Now, Leipzig wanted 100 million euros. It looks like City will be paying 90 million euros. That's around 77.6 million pounds. Big news for them, and of course, it strengthens an area where Manchester City are already so strong. Ruben Diaz, Nathan Ake, Manuel Akanji had a fantastic season, didn't he? John Stones, I know he's pushed forward now, but he can play there. Kyle Walker can play there. Aymeric Laporte can play there. So, yeah, that would be a big deal for Pep Guardiola. After winning the treble, they're back now from their pre-season tour and off the back of a fantastic, historic treble. And that would be a very good signing for them.
Dharmesh, what does it mean for Aymeric Laporte?
Well, I mean, you could question what it's going to mean for some of the Manchester City defenders that are there already. But you mentioned Aymeric Laporte. It'd be interesting to see what happens now because his game time was limited last season. Before last season, Ruben Diaz and Laporte were a really formidable partnership in the centre of that Manchester City defence. But last season, a treble-winning season, 20 starts in all competitions for Laporte. He only started 11 times in the Premier League, 3 times in their FA Cup winning run, 3 times in their Champions League winning run, and 3 times in the League Cup as well. You just wonder whether he would be the odd one out, given his game time was limited last season, going into next season. And you've got to ask the question of himself as well, whether he would want to go into next season knowing that probably his game time is going to be limited, or whether he thinks, actually, bring Gvardiol, let's embrace the challenge and I'll show everyone that I can still get into the City team. But from the outset, it looks like that Laporte might be the one that might think about maybe it's time to go, and City might think about maybe it's time to listen to offers.
It's not done, the Gvardiol deal yet, Michael, but if it does get done, it will have taken a long time. That's unusual for City. What's been the hold-up?
Leipzig don't necessarily need to sell. They've known for some time what an elite player they've got on their hands here. Then they've sold Dominic Szoboszlai to Liverpool for around £60 million. I'm sure that might have stopped the deal from going through maybe for a few weeks. Then Manchester City went on tour. We see a lot of big deals sometimes happen at the start of June, mid-June, then clubs go on tours. You get the feeling that Manchester City always knew this deal was eventually going to go through. And I think Manchester City, paying £77.6 million...
With no add-ons, I understand.
They'll be happy tonight because, as we say, he's a potential elite defender going to potentially alongside an elite defender in Ruben Diaz. It already strengthens a very, very impressive defence. I'm now very intrigued to see if Manchester City look towards maybe replacing Riyad Mahrez. I know Kovacic's come in. Was that like for Gundogan? Possibly Gundogan, a bit more attacking, you'd say. But it's interesting. Maybe Pep might be tempted to freshen it up a little bit. But what we know is if this goes through, that's a big, big sign of intent, and maybe an answer, and as to why maybe when a few of us have asked Erik ten Hag on pre-season tours, Jurgen Klopp has been asked on pre-season tours about the title race, they've distanced themselves because they know just how strong Manchester City are, and if they bring in this defender, they look very strong.
Might lose a few though, but we'll talk about that another time. Dharmesh, let's talk Manchester United. Listen, I ask you this twice a day, every day, so let's stick with tradition. What's going on with Rasmus Højlund? Is it nearly done?
Mike, just before we get to that...
that's fine enough. That's fine.
Just a bit of news to bring you on Moises Caicedo.
Go on.
Now, we know we've been reporting throughout the week that we know that Chelsea see him as their primary target. They've had an £80 million bid rejected. As it stands, there doesn't seem to be any active talks between the clubs, but we do expect Chelsea to go back in with an improved offer for Moises Caicedo. But I've just been receiving a bit of information in the past half an hour, and there's a lot of noise on social media just now with regard to a potential other club coming in for Moises Caicedo. The information that I have is that an unnamed Saudi club have made an approach to Brighton over the signing of Moises Caicedo. No official bid, but in those talks, they've kind of intimated to Brighton what they would be prepared to pay. Now, in a way, this can work in Brighton's favour, because you remember back in January, they had Arsenal who made a couple of bids, and they said no to both of those bids. Chelsea were interested then as well. They decided, no, Moises Caicedo is not for sale. He is staying at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. Then what happened is that they tied him down to a new contract, even though in that January transfer window, towards the end of that window, Moises Caicedo via social media made it clear that he did want to go. But I think Brighton's attitude was, we're still fighting on a few fronts here. They were still in the FA Cup, managed to get to the semi-finals, a penalty kick away from getting to the final. And they thought, we know he's going to have a good season. We're going to try and get into European football next season. And that can only work in our favour come the summer, because he's under a new contract anyway, but it's going to be more likely that more clubs will be interested in Moises Caicedo. And if you have more clubs interested in one of your players, it only does one thing to the price, and that is push it up. So it's almost a good thing for Brighton that now we've got particularly a club in Saudi Arabia who have got big money to be able to spend on whoever they want, that Brighton could then go to Chelsea and say, well, if we're valuing him at £100 million, this club are potentially willing to go as close to that valuation as possible. Of course, it will come down to Brighton, and of course, it will come down to Moises Caicedo if Brighton were to agree any kind of deal with any club. The information we have now hasn't changed with regard to Caicedo himself, in that he does want to go to Chelsea. That's the information we have. Chelsea are getting
how many
encouragement.
pounds are on offer.
Yeah, but we're getting Chelsea, we think, are getting encouragement that that's his preferred destination. But this will just add to the mix. An unnamed Saudi club, we think, have made an approach to Brighton and have intimated to Brighton how much they'd be willing to pay.
That is a great update. Right, I am going to break with tradition, because I'm going to ask you 3 times today. Rasmus Højlund, Manchester United, how close?
Who? Yeah. Look, he arrived in the UK yesterday. We thought that the main part of his medical had started yesterday. It was actually initial medical testing that took place yesterday. The main part of his medical has been taking place today. Normally, these medicals take 24 to 48 hours to fully complete. Big deals require rigorous medical checks, as we know. A formal announcement of his transfer from Atalanta is expected by the end of this week, and he could potentially be formally presented on Saturday at Old Trafford when Manchester United play Lens in a pre-season friendly. Just a reminder of the deal, and I've said it many times, but it's worth reiterating. An initial £64 million is what Manchester United will pay Atalanta. Performance-related add-ons come to £8 million. So the deal in total, if he fulfills all the conditions, is £72 million. He'll sign a 5-year contract with the option of a further 12 months. But he's been having the main part of his medical today, formal announcement before the end of the week.
Right, OK. Let's talk Harry Maguire. Do we have any indication of where he might be playing his football next season?
Right, what do we know? We know that West Ham United are definitely interested. We know that they went in with a bid of £20 million that was rejected out of hand by Manchester United. At the time, it was thought that West Ham were going to move on to other targets, one of them being Bayer Leverkusen's Jonathan Tah. And there's a relationship there with Tim Stuyton, the West Ham director of football, in that he used to be the sporting coordinator at Bayer Leverkusen. Jonathan Tah was there when Stuyton was there. Stuyton oversaw the extension of his contract in 2021 until 2025. So there's an option there. But with regard to Maguire, I don't think you can rule it out, West Ham United going back in, even though it would be a difficult deal to do simply because of the transfer fee that would be involved and, more significantly probably, the wages that Harry Maguire would command. From Manchester United's perspective, it should be said that they're not pushing Harry Maguire out of the door. They see him as a top player, they see him as a key member of his squad, and they would only even begin to consider any kind of offers that came in for Harry Maguire if they reflected fair market value. And it's obvious that they thought that £20 million did not reflect fair market value. But we do know the situation Harry Maguire finds himself in. Last season, his game time was limited. The preferred central defensive pairing appears to be Lisandro Martinez and Rafael Varane. There were players like Victor Lindelof and even Luke Shaw who were getting in ahead of Maguire last season in that central defensive position. And the added ingredient this time is Johnny Evans. He's got a short-term pre-season contract, but a longer-term permanent contract to cover next season hasn't been ruled out. If that was to happen, would we expect Johnny Evans to be ahead of Harry Maguire in the pecking order? And what would that do to Harry Maguire's thinking?
Absolutely. Michael, yesterday you were telling me Tottenham Hotspur need central defenders. What about Harry Maguire? Would they be interested?
He's not on the list of defenders I understand that Spurs are looking at. I think maybe other clubs are probably looking at Harry Maguire and the way his last few weeks and next few weeks are going at Manchester United. His wage, his fee, the relationship potentially between the two clubs. Of course, Manchester United have told us and other media outlets that, you know, Harry Kane is not a transfer target, and Tottenham and Manchester United don't really do much deals together over the last few years. Now, Spurs will be bringing in defenders before the close of the window, and Spurs urgently need to bring in defenders. Ashley Phillips from Blackburn is close. Their £2 million release clause comes into effect by the end of the week. That should be done by Friday. Spurs thought this was all pretty much done a few weeks ago, but then I think Blackburn wanted a little bit more, maybe wanted a few more clubs to get involved. But I understand that Phillips only wants to join Tottenham, so that should go through. Spurs looking to bring more homegrown players in.
Senior defenders, though?
Yes. So on Tottenham's list, Mickey van der Ven, Edwin Tapasoba, Tosin Adarabioyo at Fulham. Clement Lenglet, Spurs fans will know from a loan spell last season, that might be explored at the very, very end of the window. They like Mark Guehi at Palace, but I think that's quite unlikely at the moment. Palace would command such a huge fee for him, and with reason. But there are reports out there that Tottenham have made real progression with Mickey van der Ven and Wolfsburg, so more on that as we get it. But I think there'll be real disappointment, Mike, if Spurs don't bring one of these defenders in ahead of the game against Brentford. It's a real key area Spurs must strengthen. They conceded 63 league goals last season, and I'm sure Ange Postecoglou will be asked about that in his press conference on Friday. Just one other line to bring you, because Spurs really need to, like we've mentioned with Arsenal and other clubs in terms of outgoing, Spurs need to take a few players out as well. Talks continue with Galatasaray over a fee for Tanguy Ndombele. There is interest from Galatasaray there. So more on that as we get it. And as I say, we'll be speaking to Ange Postecoglou on Friday ahead of a friendly against Shakhtar Donetsk on Sunday.
Great, look forward to hearing from him. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to go back in and talk about that goalkeeping situation at Arsenal. It is fascinating. And we've got more on Chelsea. That's all to come. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Before the break, Darmesh gave us some breaking news, or some interesting news at least, on Moises Caicedo. Do you just want to reiterate that, please?
Yeah, it's to do with an unnamed Saudi Arabian club who have made an approach to Brighton over the signing of Moises Caicedo. I'm told there's been no official bid, but they've intimated to Brighton what they would be prepared to pay. Caicedo, we know, remains Chelsea's primary target. Talks aren't active just now, but we know that Chelsea have had a couple of bids rejected already in this window, the latest of which was worth £80 million, which was rejected immediately by Brighton. They value Caicedo closer to what West Ham valued Declan Rice, and that's around £100 million. But we are told that Chelsea, even though there aren't active talks at the moment, will go back in this window at some point with an improved offer. And we also think that Chelsea are getting encouragement that Moises Caicedo would want to make the move. But this, I think, will help Brighton as well, because if you've got another club in the mix, not least a club from Saudi Arabia who can afford big money, then maybe that can push the price up, and then maybe push Chelsea into a little bit more urgent action to try and meet the valuation that Brighton have for the player. But as it stands, no official bid from this unnamed Saudi Arabian club, but they've told Brighton what they would be prepared to pay for him.
And I know as soon as you've got news, you will tell us. So that might accelerate Chelsea's business with Caicedo. Any more news from Chelsea, Michael?
Well, this is very good news for Chelsea. Someone they were determined to keep. Mauricio Pochettino determined to keep him. Levi Colwill has signed a 6-year deal plus a 1-year option. Now, we always keep the eyebrows are raised about Chelsea's contracts last season. I don't think any eyebrows are going to be raised here, Mike. He's so highly regarded, so much so that on Chelsea's US tour, Mauricio Pochettino said he can be one of the greatest centre-backs in England. Pochettino, a defender back in the day himself, and a very good one, so he'll know. It was good vibes from Chelsea with... Carwell was saying on social media last night a message to Brighton thanking them and how much he means to them, because Brighton were very keen to get him back. Roberto Zerbi, big fan of him, but he'll be staying at Chelsea. And you imagine a big part of what Pochettino plans to do at Chelsea next season, and hopefully for them beyond. Yeah,
their plans taking shape. Let's talk Arsenal. What about their plans, Darmesh? Aaron Ramsdale playing right at the moment. They're playing Monaco in the Emirates Cup. What is the situation with this goalkeeping conundrum?
Yeah, I think Mikel Arteta wants to bring in a goalkeeper to compete with Aaron Ramsdale, possibly more than Matt Turner is competing with Aaron Ramsdale at the moment. And the player that they are exploring an interest in is the Brentford goalkeeper, David Raya. They've had a long-term interest in David Raya. Arsenal and Mikel Arteta in particular, they've tried to sign him before, have been unsuccessful. Potentially, this could be the time to do a deal. Brentford have just signed a new goalkeeper to be their number one, but David Raya is still on the books, but he's entered the final year of his contract. Thomas Frank has said he expects him to leave, but he wants £40 million for him. Now, the interest in Raya could be formalised, could be a bit of a domino effect here, if there is a degree of certainty on Matt Turner's future. Now, we know that Nottingham Forest want to sign Matt Turner. Talks are continuing between the two clubs over the potential signing of the USA goalkeeper. And we're told that Forest will actually want two goalkeepers. Because if you look back to last season, they had Dean Henderson at the club, and then he suffered a really serious thigh injury in January. They brought in Keylor Navas. Now, both of those goalkeepers are no longer at Nottingham Forest, so that's probably why they want to reinforce that position. And they do actually want to bring Dean Henderson back as well, and talks are continuing with Manchester United over a loan with an obligation. So it seems that they are going for both of these goalkeepers. But once the Matt Turner one is probably looking like it's going to happen, I think that's when Arsenal could potentially make this exploration of a deal for David Raya into more of a concrete deal for David Raya.
Michael, isn't this a dangerous game that Arteta's playing, though? Because let's say Ramsdale starts the season, makes a couple of mistakes in the first couple of games. We know what happens. Everyone starts calling for Raya. So isn't he going to have this situation where he's always unsettled with his goalkeepers?
It's very intriguing because it did come slightly out of nowhere. I mean, he was heavily linked with Spurs at the start of the window, David Raya, and Spurs went for Guillermo Vicario in the end. David Raya, as Thomas Frank has said, He's worth £40 million. He keeps saying this, £40 million. So
he's a top goalkeeper.
He is. If he's, yeah, I mean, but £40 million, you know, that's an intriguing fee. And is this, though, Arsenal just saying, we want to be the best? Arsenal's goalkeeping department believe that Raya is a better option than Ramsdale. They spent big on Declan Rice. They spent big on Kai Havertz, Julian Timber. They recruited ever so well last year. That made them get close to winning the Premier League. And is it just them being pretty ruthless? It's an intriguing one for sure. And I'm intrigued to see even the body language of Aaron Ramsdale. It might be a friendly against Monaco at the moment, but how's he feeling tonight? He's a goalkeeper who likes to get involved with the home fans. He likes to get involved with the away fans. But how's he feeling tonight? Is he kind of on some kind of trial? But what we know is Mikel Arteta is a pretty ruthless guy, and he'll want the best for Arsenal Football Club ahead of a season where, the title race could be a bit more open maybe next season, you know, because they've started well in terms of recruitment, Arsenal. So, look, there'll be a press conference after tonight's game against Monaco. Mikel Arteta, like all top Premier League managers, don't give a lot away, but it'll be interesting to see what he says.
Will he be talking, Dharmesh, about the players that he wants out of the club?
Well, I mean, Michael was in the States, weren't you? You've mentioned it a few times.
Last week, and he said a squad of 31 is unsustainable. So, yes.
Yeah, and there's potential exits in a number of positions. There are a lot of players who didn't actually go on the US tour. One of them was Nicolas Pepe, who was, until a couple of weeks ago, Arsenal's club record signing. £72 million in 2019. They bought him from Lille. Hasn't worked out for him, a couple of loan spells, but he's back at Arsenal and he's still on Arsenal's books. However, he's entered the final year of his contract. And he's obviously not in Mikel Arteta's plan. So this is going to be the window where, if they are going to release him, this is the only time, really, they'll be able to get any kind of money for Nicolas Pepe. Besiktas, we are told, are pushing to sign Nicolas Pepe. Talks are ongoing between the clubs over a deal. And I'm sure if Arsenal can get a deal done whereby they do get a transfer fee, I'm sure they'll take it. It's going to be a loss. It's obviously going to be a loss from the £72 million that they spent in 2019. But I think Mikel Arteta, as Michael mentioned there, is ruthless. He knows who he wants in his squad. He knows who he doesn't want in his squad. Nicolas Pepe among a number of players that he doesn't want there.
OK, let's talk West Ham. James Ward-Prowse, what's going on? Are they going to get him or not?
It should be said here that West Ham are looking at alternatives to James Ward-Prowse. We had that situation yesterday in the space of an hour, where we thought they were close to signing James Ward-Prowse, followed by they're walking away from the deal. The information I have today is that they've not given up on signing the Southampton captain. We're told that the bid that Southampton rejected was worth £30 million. So that was £27 million initial payment, £3 million in performance-related add-ons. When that was rejected, we think that West Ham decided to walk away from the deal. Question is, have they actually walked away from the deal, or is this all part of the transfer mind games that go on? Are Southampton thinking, oh goodness, they've gone, there's no other club that's really in for him, are we going to get a deal like this again? Or are they thinking, that's exactly what West Ham think we're thinking, and we're just going to stand firm on our valuation? The bid that West Ham made has been described as a take it or leave it offer, hence why we're told that they've walked away. Southampton's valuation closer to £40 million. Now, for a deal to get done, it seems that Southampton would have to compromise more than West Ham. That's the way it's been painted to me at the moment. But with West Ham walking away from it, is there a deal to be done? I still think they are in for him. David Moises does want to sign the player. He's a big fan of the player. West Ham have tried to sign him before, and I think significantly they are getting encouragement that James Ward-Prowse would want to make the move from St Mary's, from the Championship to the London Stadium and back in the Premier League.
Do you know what strikes a chord with me? Gone are the days where when a club is relegated, you can literally just pick up a player for X amount of money, and a club relegated has reluctantly got to accept it. Getting back in the Premier League is so important for the likes of Southampton. Russell Martin said, we're playing Sheffield Wednesday, Friday night, live on Sky. And then they are literally, these players aren't going to be with me potentially in a few weeks. But it's so important to get this money, to get this value, because being in the Premier League the next season is so key. They don't want to stay in the Championship.
Well, the Championship is so strong. You look at the teams in the Championship, you're going to need top players to have any chance of getting out. Speaking of getting out, is Scamacca getting out of West Ham?
Potentially. Atalanta are the latest club who are exploring a deal to sign Gianluca Scamacca. We think they're preparing a bid for around 30 million euros, which would probably get the deal done. Now, earlier on in this window, Roma were interested. It's Inter Milan who have shown the strongest interest so far. They've had a bid rejected by West Ham of around 20 million euros. We're expecting Inter to come back for another bid worth 30 million euros, rather like what Atalanta are prepared to pay. That would come in the form of 25 million euros initial payment, plus 5 million euros in performance-related add-ons. I spoke to Gianluca Di Marzio earlier on today about this potential deal, and he seems to think that Scamacca is likely to wait for Inter, and he probably wouldn't go to Atalanta. However, money talks. Inter do need to make that deal acceptable to West Ham United. If Atalanta come in and West Ham accept that deal and Inter don't match it, and Scamacca then will have a decision to make. Do I stay at West Ham or do I go to Atalanta, or hope and wait that Inter Milan are going to raise that bid to bring me in? Hasn't really worked out for him at West Ham United. 30 to 35 million pounds transfer fee last summer. Huge fanfare when he arrived from Sassuolo. I think he only made about 16 starts in all competitions, 8 goals in all competitions as well. It might be the time to part ways if West Ham United can recoup the majority of that transfer fee.
Indeed. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get the Danish view on Rasmus Højlund's move to Manchester United. And it comes with a warning. We're also going to talk about one of our favourite topics, Harry Kane. Oh, yes. And Jurgen Klopp is the latest manager to speak out on the Saudi Pro League. That and more to come. We'll see you. been really interesting what Jurgen Klopp has had to say about the Saudi Pro League today. Michael, just précis for us what he said.
Yeah, he's concerned the window in Saudi is open 3 weeks after it closes. Now, look, we've seen Liverpool sell Fabinho and Jordan Henderson to clubs in the Saudi Pro League for around £55 million. But I think he's talking about his concerns in terms of the window closing and his concern about players he doesn't particularly want to sell, not just Liverpool's, just other clubs in general. Carve noted earlier to you, didn't he, that FIFA says that the 20th September was the closure of that league, but Saudi clubs he's spoken to say they're working towards it closing on the 7th. That's still 6 days after the window shutting here. I think there's two ways to look at it. They might lose a player they don't want to lose. Approaches from Saudi clubs could unsettle players. We've got European squad registration, Champions League, Europa League and whatnot. So he doesn't want an Alexander Mitrovic situation where a player wants to go to Saudi Arabia. The flip side is, might be good for clubs that with players you don't necessarily want. We get transfer deadline days here now. I think from being involved with deadline days over the last few years, I'm usually reporting on players who need to find other clubs, loans with obligations and options. But also, you know, we're talking about football. It's a global sport. It's not necessarily just European football. It's not necessarily the Premier League.
Well, it's not.
No.
It's just not.
No.
It's a global game.
And I know he's calling on FIFA and UEFA, but ultimately it's up to individual football associations to decide when windows open and close. We can't really have a global transfer window because our seasons start at different times as well. So it's up to individual associations. But of course, we've seen Steven Gerrard, Jordan Henderson, Benzema, Ruben Neves, N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez. And of course, we've already got Cristiano Ronaldo there already. So, and more will follow. So it's extremely intriguing, very interesting to hear from Jurgen Klopp. And I think in terms of fairness, when people might say, oh, Jurgen Klopp's talking about it again, it is from a post-match press conference after playing Bayern Munich. When we get our Premier League press conferences returning Friday week, a lot of people were asking managers about it because it's changed the whole landscape. Speaking to a director from AC Milan last week in America, he said it's going to be one of the top 5 leagues in the world, whether we like it or not.
And isn't that the point, that nobody put the Premier League in charge of world football? It's not for the Premier League to dictate when any other league has its transfer window.
Well, I know what you're saying, but I think what Jurgen Klopp and possibly other Premier League managers and other managers in top European leagues will say is they will be left exposed by the fact that their window will be closed. And because the dynamic of this transfer window has been changed by Saudi, it's not a case of like before there was like maybe the Turkish window was open. It wasn't going to be a case where these Turkish clubs will be able to afford such big transfer fees. I'm not saying it's wrong that Saudi Arabia can afford these big transfer fees, but I know you're saying, oh, the Premier League used to be able to pick their players from wherever they want.
And still can.
But I'm talking about, and I think Jurgen Klopp is worried about the timing. This is not to do with, oh, they can just go around and spend however much money they want and bring a player in. The fact of the matter is they'll be doing it within the confines of a transfer window whereby another European club, potentially who they're buying off, will still have time, because it's in that time frame of that same transfer window, to bring someone else in. What Jurgen Klopp is perhaps worried about is this window will close in European football, in the Premier League, in Spain, in Germany, in Italy, in France, and yet they will be open to some of their top players leaving that club without having the opportunity to replace them. Okay. It's all well and good. I know what you're saying. It's all well and good. The Premier League have been in a position for years where they have been able to spend what they want, but they haven't been in that position where they've been able to spend what they want and then left another club exposed to, well, how are we going to be able to get anyone else in?
But do you know that? Because what about getting players from Mali or getting players from New Zealand or around the world when their seasons are different? The Premier League's just taken them because it can. And now there's somebody else on the landscape who can do that to the Premier League. Surely the Premier League has to just suck it up.
Well, Michael said it there. This is a different landscape now because of the money that's involved from Saudi Arabia. This is not like when Michael was saying he's outside the ground on deadline day, who's going to go on loan, or can they afford an option? This is like they can spend £100 million. But what good is that £100 million to that club in that position when they won't be able to spend that £100 million and they'll be losing one of their best players?
Yeah.
Because the problem they're going to have, as Michael said about Mitrovic, is not, yeah, the club can say, we're not going to sell you. Full stop. Well, you're not going anywhere because you're under contract. But what impact is it going to have on the player? Like he had on Mitrovic, he wasn't training with the team for a little while. Fulham was saying, you're not going anywhere, £52 million, but I want to go. Imagine there are big players in the Premier League who are saying, I want to go, when they're in a position when the Premier League club can't actually buy anyone if they were to go.
I think we're going to revisit this one without a shadow of a doubt. All right. Now, the Premier League back in just over a week, as we know. Harry Kane's future, as we also know, still uncertain. What we do know is that Bayern Munich and Spurs are still about £20 million apart in their valuation. So what happens next? Well, European football expert Kevin Hatchard had his say earlier.
I think it is still in the balance because that gap between where Tottenham are and where Bayern are is still quite big. But I think Bayern are confident that if they could strike a deal with Daniel Levy, Kane would want to come. I've said all the way through the summer, there's no way Bayern get involved at all and keep this going for as long as they have if they haven't got some indication from Kane that he's interested in coming to Germany. I think this would be an enormous signing for Bayern as a club. I think it'd be great for the Bundesliga because if you look at the Bundesliga in recent years, what's it really been about? It's been about developing young talents to then move on. We've had Jude Bellingham, we've had Erling Haaland, we've had Jadon Sancho. So to actually bring in a player of Kane's quality that a lot of top clubs around Europe would like to sign, I think that would be a real coup for Bayern and for the country.
So any updates on Kane, Michael?
No, not from yesterday. There was widespread reports yesterday that he expects to stay at Tottenham if he's not sold before their Premier League opener away to Brentford, which is live August the 13th on Sky Sports Super Sunday. Other sources, however, indicated that a move to Bayern may still be on the agenda until September the 1st, that Kane, man goes to work, carried out his media duties yesterday. He'll be, I'm sure, in the squad for the game against Shakhtar Donetsk on Sunday, and he's an ultimate professional. So there's no update today. But the interesting situation is, and of course, this is why it's so intriguing, Friday's press conference with Ange Postecoglou, they need to appoint a club captain. We talked about Manchester United and a captain earlier. Yeah. Hugo Lloris is looking for a new club. He's still there as it stands. But Spurs and Ange Postecoglou need to make a decision soon on their club captain ahead of the new season. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm hearing you've got a line on Willian for us. What is it? It's just a message from our colleague Carve. Saudi Pro League club Al Shabab want to sign Willian. Now, Willian has only just rejoined Fulham. Yeah. Now, we're told Fulham have yet to receive an offer. He signed a one-year Fulham contract 2 weeks ago. And so, yeah, more on that as we get it. But Saudi Pro League club Al Shabab want to sign Willian. Wow, it's interesting. All right, let's go back to Manchester United, Darmesh. As we said earlier, the Højlund deal almost done. Is that going to be the end of their incomings for this window?
The bulk of their incoming business looks like it's done. I think the focus will be on departures, but there's still that window of opportunity for them to bring in new signings if they recoup enough money from potential departures. The Sofian Amrabat story doesn't go away. The Fiorentina midfielder. Manchester United are aware of the Fiorentina midfielder Amrabat's desire to come to Old Trafford. I think Fiorentina are aware that there is some interest from Manchester United as well. The way it's been painted to me, he's on a list of a number of players, but it's a very, very strong interest. Erik ten Hag knows him very, very well. He managed him when he was manager at Utrecht, and Amrabat was a player there. As I said, incomings are likely to depend on departures. And look, he's only got a year left on his contract, but Fiorentina have the option to extend that for a further 12 months. When you get down to 1 or 2 years, it's probably the optimum time. If the player's not going to renew his contract, the optimum time is now to basically get the maximum transfer fee. But as I said, it would require departures. And there could be movement on departures because Galatasaray remain in talks with United over the signing of the Brazilian midfielder Fred. discussions centering on a fee and a structure. Fred has entered significantly the final year of his contract, and he actually didn't go on the pre-season tour to the US. It was initially because of personal issues, but then it got so late in the tour that it was decided that he wasn't going to go to the US and then come back almost immediately, given everyone else had trained a lot more together than he had done. And Real Sociedad, we are told, continue to negotiate with Manchester United on a loan with an option to buy Donny van de Beek. Now, he actually threw doubt on his own future following that pre-season friendly against Lyon a couple of weeks ago, when he actually admitted, I don't know if I am going to stay. It's going to be up to the manager, but who knows? It's 50-50.
Interesting. It didn't work out for Van der Beek at Manchester United. Will it work out for Rasmus Højlund if he actually gets the deal done? We're going to speak more about him after the break, and we're also going to hear from the Burnley manager, Vincent Kompany. See you in a moment. Hello again. As Dharmesh has been telling us, Rasmus Højlund is in England to complete his move to Manchester United. Well, Danish football journalist Morten Bruin spoke to us earlier and warned United fans not to expect too much too soon. And he said comparisons with the striking Viking are not helpful.
It's a tough call for Rasmus Højlund to be compared to Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland was, in my opinion, much more the Finnish article when he joined Manchester City. And if Manchester United fans expect Rasmus Højlund to score 36 times in the Premier next season, I'm afraid they'd be disappointed. But in a reasonable amount of time, I think they'll be happy about Rasmus Højlund. I think he's got the potential, but he'll be even better in 2 or 3 seasons' time. He's only 20 years old, and I accept that when Manchester United call for you, you just join Manchester United. Why wouldn't you? But he's not the finished article. He did sensationally well when you looked at his age and his story when he came to the Serie A last year, but he was also benched for a couple of times at Atalanta. So I think it's a very, very big step for Rasmus Højlund to join a club like Manchester United at this moment of time. His development in Denmark has been sensational. It's only 1.5 years ago that FC Copenhagen, the leading Danish club, let him go and brought in 5 new strikers. They let him go to Austria, and now with only 1 season behind him in the Serie A, and as people might be aware, Rasmus Højlund didn't even join the squad for the World Cup, for the Danish World Cup in Qatar. So his development has been absolutely sensational. The excitement is pretty huge in Denmark. Manchester United is probably the club with the most Danish fans at all, and Rasmus Højlund is our striker from the national team. So I would say that with this transfer getting ever closer, it will be the biggest transfer story in Danish football ever. So the excitement is huge.
Darmesh, this is fascinating. I know we touched on this yesterday. Hearing from a Danish journalist there, he's saying, big step, potential. Are Manchester United paying an awful lot of money for an unproven striker?
I think everything he's saying is what Manchester United understand. They know they're signing a young player with potential. They know what the going rate is for young players with potential, and in particular they're aware that they're Manchester United, and when a club is selling to Manchester United, they know that potentially they can charge a little bit more. And also they know that Manchester United's priority was to bring in a striker. I'm sure Erik ten Hag has taken into account all of this, to the point where, will he start straight away? I don't know. That's going to be up to Erik ten Hag. Is he ready to start straight away? Erik ten Hag will see that in training and find out whether he is ready to start straight away. But he's got players like Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial and Jadon Sancho, who he's been playing as a false 9 during pre-season in some of the games, who he knows he can play there while allowing someone like Rasmus Højlund to develop, because he doesn't want to put too much pressure on a young kid too early. But by all accounts, he's a confident player as well, and I'm sure he'll want to do and hit the ground running with United anyway.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that one turns out. Right, it's been a pretty busy window for Burnley, hasn't it, following their promotion to the Premier League. So we asked Vincent Kompany if he was happy with his business or if he wants more.
I think I'm like every manager at this moment in time in pre-season. I'm happy with the players we've got, but I'm still looking to make sure we can still improve the team, and that's what we've got to do at this moment in time.
When you went out shopping this summer, what were your priorities?
Yeah, we lost six players obviously last season that were there on loan. So the story for us is maybe a little bit different than other clubs recruiting at this moment in time. We have to first almost bring players across to get back to the level we had last season. And then we have to add to that. So I think that's been the key emphasis of this transfer window.
Right, that's Vincent. Darmesh, so who is he after? He's not giving too much away, but who is he chasing now?
Well, one player we know he is chasing is someone he knows very, very well, and that's the Arsenal midfielder Albert Sambi Lokonga. The deal under discussion between the two clubs is for a loan with an option to buy, and it's thought that option could turn into an obligation depending on the number of appearances he has during that time. And I mentioned he knows him very, very well. Vincent Kompany managed Albert Sambi Lokonga when the pair were at Anderlecht, and Kompany was the manager there. He was the manager there when he sold Albert Sambi Lokonga to Arsenal back in 2021. And he once described Lokonga, I know I've said it before here, but it's worth saying again, as the new Yaya Toure. So
gets a gasp every time you say it, so you might as well keep saying it.
So, but it just illustrates how highly Vincent Kompany rates the player. He's obviously not in Arsenal's plans. He was not part of the tour that went to the United States. He spent the second half of last season on loan at Crystal Palace, and I think Arsenal are quite comfortable with the fact that it could be a loan, and if the loan doesn't work out and he comes back, he's still got 3 years left on his contract as it stands, so he will still have time on his contract for them to be able to get a transfer fee thereafter.
Right, we're running out of time. We've got a minute or so. Michael, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, what's going on with his future?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lot of players moving to Saudi, potentially quite a few players moving to Turkey this summer. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain in talks with Besiktas. Besiktas' president has met with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain staying in a hotel in London. They're trying to convince him to join the club. Of course, he left Liverpool at the end of last season.
Just a quick line to bring you. It broke earlier on today, Manchester United and Sunderland announcing the transfer from United to Sunderland of one of their goalkeepers, Nathan Bishop. I've just posed the question whether that will have any impact on Dean Henderson's future at United, because they've got now one less goalkeeper at the club. I'm told that the talks are continuing with Nottingham Forest. It won't impact the deal for Henderson going from United to Forest, but it's likely that United would have to bring in another goalkeeper if Henderson was to leave.
So much we packed in there. We're done for another day on the Transfer Show. Michael, Dharmesh, thank you very much. Been very interesting. Have you just been to the States? California.
For work.
Didn't know.
For work.
California. We're back tomorrow with a Transfer Show, and Sky Sports News is next with the very latest updates. We'll see you.